A tariff is essentially a tax placed on goods that are brought into a country from abroad. It's one of the oldest tools in the economic playbook, used by governments to influence trade and protect their own industries. The main idea behind tariffs is to make foreign products more expensive, so that locally made goods become more attractive to buyers. This is supposed to give domestic companies a fighting chance against international competition. For example, when a Japanese car or car part arrives at a US port, the government adds a fee to its price. The hope is that, with higher prices on imports, Americans will be more likely to choose vehicles made by US companies. But the story doesn't end at the port. The extra cost from the tariff doesn't just disappear, it gets passed along the entire supply chain. Importers pay more, wholesalers pay more, dealerships pay more, and ultimately, it's the consumer who feels the pinch when it's time to buy a car. What starts as a government policy to protect jobs and industries quickly turns into a higher price tag for families shopping for their next vehicle. For many, this can mean putting off a purchase or settling for less. And in today's interconnected world, even cars assembled in America often rely on parts made overseas. Engines, electronics, and other components might come from Japan, Germany, or Mexico. So, when tariffs are imposed, the cost of building US-made cars goes up too. This makes it hard to draw a clear line between helping American manufacturing and unintentionally hurting it. The global nature of the auto industry means that tariffs can have unexpected consequences for workers and companies on both sides of the ocean. The result is a delicate balancing act. While tariffs might help some factories and workers, they can also raise costs for others, and for the millions of Americans who rely on affordable transportation. For the auto industry, tariffs disrupt a global network that's been built over decades. Companies are forced to rethink their supply chains, redesign their manufacturing processes, and sometimes even halt production while they figure out how to adapt. The ripple effects are felt everywhere, from the factory floor where cars are assembled, to the dealership showroom where customers make their choices. Every link in the chain is affected. Tariffs may sound simple on paper, but in reality, their impact is complex and far-reaching, touching every part of the auto industry and every consumer who dreams of owning a car. The US tariffs on Japanese cars aren't random. They're the result of decades of economic tension and fierce competition between two of the world's largest car industries. For years, Japanese automakers have steadily increased their share of the American market, often outpacing domestic brands in both sales and reputation for reliability. These tariffs are rooted in a push to level the playing field for American industry, especially for workers and manufacturers in cities like Detroit, where the auto industry is a cornerstone of the local economy. Supporters argue that foreign automakers, especially from Japan, have long enjoyed easier access to the US market than American brands have abroad. They point to trade barriers, strict regulations, and cultural preferences in Japan that make it tough for American cars to compete on equal footing. By taxing imports, the goal is to make American cars more competitive and revive domestic manufacturing, protecting jobs and encouraging investment in US factories. Japan's automakers, Toyota, Honda, Nissan, are top sellers in the US, making them prime targets for these new trade policies. Their vehicles are known for quality and affordability, which has helped them win over millions of American drivers. The logic is simple. Every Japanese car sold is one less American car sold. This competition has put pressure on US automakers to innovate, but it's also led to job losses and plant closures in some regions. Tariffs are meant to pressure Japan into fairer trade, but it's a high-stakes gamble that could spark retaliation or disrupt global supply chains. The hope is that short-term pain will lead to long-term gains for US jobs and industry, giving American companies the breathing room they need to adapt and compete. But whether this strategy will work or backfire remains the big question. Economists warn that higher prices could hurt consumers, and there's no guarantee Japan will open its market in response. The outcome could reshape the global auto market for years, influencing not just what we drive, but how nations trade and compete on the world stage. Japanese automakers like Toyota and Honda aren't just foreign brands, they're deeply woven into the American economy. Over decades, they've built massive US plants, employing over 100,000 Americans in high-skilled jobs. These factories use many American-made parts and support thousands more jobs at local suppliers and dealerships. In towns across the Midwest and South, these plants are economic lifelines, funding schools and public services. Tariffs threaten not just companies but entire communities that depend on these jobs. The idea that tariffs protect American workers is complicated. Sometimes they put those very jobs at risk. Japanese automakers have become major American employers. Trade policy now blurs the line between foreign and domestic more than ever. The tariffs have hit Japanese automakers hard, sending shockwaves through the industry and leaving even the most established companies scrambling to adapt. Once considered untouchable giants, Toyota and Honda now find themselves facing a financial crisis that few could have predicted just a year ago. Toyota, the world's largest automaker, was forced to slash its profit forecast by 16%, a staggering adjustment for a company of its size. Executives warned that the new tariffs could erase over $7 billion in profits, a blow that threatens not just quarterly earnings, but the company's long-term ambitions and global competitiveness. Honda, too, is reeling. Its profits plunged a shocking 50% in a single quarter, a drop that has sent shockwaves through the company's leadership and workforce. Both automakers are now being forced to rethink their strategies, cutting costs, and delaying projects just to stay afloat. Money that was once earmarked for innovation, research, and expansion in the US is now being diverted to simply absorb the mounting tariff costs. Ambitious plans for new models, electric vehicles, and advanced manufacturing have been put on hold as every yen is scrutinized. Even a new trade deal, which lowered tariffs to 15%, still 6 times higher than before, has failed to bring real relief. The slow pace of implementation and ongoing uncertainty mean that companies are still operating in a climate of fear and hesitation. Automakers are stuck in limbo, unable to plan or price their products with any confidence. The unpredictability makes it nearly impossible to forecast demand, set budgets, or make long-term investments. The financial strain is real. Decades of steady growth and stability are now threatened by a single, sweeping policy shift. The legacy of these companies built over generations is suddenly at risk. These losses aren't just numbers on a balance sheet, they translate to less investment in new technology, fewer jobs for workers, and stalled progress on the innovations that once set these automakers apart. Tariffs, intended as a tool for negotiation, have instead become a weapon causing deep wounds in the industry. The ripple effects are being felt not just in Japan, but across the global automotive supply chain. The uncertainty is unsustainable for even the biggest players. Without a clear path forward, the future of Japan's automotive giants, and the millions who depend on them, hangs in the balance. Tariffs were supposed to protect American jobs, but they're putting over 100,000 US auto workers at risk. As costs rise, Japanese automakers may cut shifts, freeze hiring, or even lay off workers in their American plants. The impact ripples out. Suppliers and local businesses that depend on these factories face their own threats. Communities built around these plants could see economic decline. The policy meant to help American workers is now endangering them. The supply chain is vast, and a slowdown at one plant affects jobs across the country. The line between helping and hurting American workers has never been thinner. Tariffs risk hollowing out the very regions they were meant to protect. For families, tariffs mean higher car prices, sometimes thousands more for a Toyota or Honda. That extra cost can put a new car out of reach, forcing buyers to settle for used vehicles or take on more debt. Lower and middle-income households are hit hardest, as every dollar counts. With inflation already rising, tariffs add to the squeeze on family budgets. The policy acts like a regressive tax, taking a bigger bite from those who can least afford it. The dream of owning a safe, reliable car slips further away for many. Tariffs don't just affect companies, they hit kitchen tables across America. The result? Fewer choices, higher bills, and more financial stress for everyday people. Tariffs have thrown Japanese automakers' strategies into chaos. Instead of investing in electric vehicles and new technology, companies are focused on survival. Long-term planning is nearly impossible when costs and rules keep changing. Expansion projects are on hold, and innovation is slowing. Some companies may try to localize supply chains, but that's expensive and time-consuming. The industry is shifting from growth to damage control. This defensive posture hurts not just automakers, but the US manufacturing base as a whole. The cost of lost innovation and stalled progress could last for years. Tariffs have turned a forward-looking industry into one stuck in crisis mode. As summer 2025 ends, the future of Japanese automakers in America is uncertain. Delayed tariff relief has deepened anxiety for companies, workers, and communities. If high tariffs and unpredictability continue, Japanese firms may cut U.S. investments and jobs. The very manufacturing-based tariffs aimed to protect could be weakened. Swift policy change could restore stability, investment, and jobs. The stakes are high. The fate of a vital U.S.-Japan partnership hangs in the balance. Trade policy isn't just about economics. It shapes lives and communities. The next decisions will determine whether the industry rebounds or declines. The road ahead will define the future of American manufacturing for years to come.